This morning, you woke up. You reached for a switch, or a button, or a pod. Within minutes, a hot, dark liquid was in your hand, and your brain started to feel normal again. You didn't think about it. You never do. But the real answer to why you need that cup is far stranger and far older than you think. Your body is not asking for coffee. It is asking for something it has needed for over 1,000 years. Start with a goat herder, not a scientist, not a king, a goat herder in the highlands of what is now Ethiopia, watching his goats one afternoon. The goats found a bush. They ate its bright red berries, and then, according to the old story, they would not sleep. They pranced, they bleated, they refused to lie down for the night, dancing in circles under the stars, like something had lit a fire under their hooves. The herder was curious. He tried the berries himself. You already know what happened next. His heart quickened, his mind sharpened, the fog of the day lifted, and something in his chest felt awake in a way it hadn't before. He had just discovered, completely by accident, one of the most powerful psychoactive compounds ever used by human civilization. That compound is caffeine, and what he found would eventually reshape trade routes, fuel revolutions, and end up sitting on your kitchen counter 1,000 years later. Historians are honest about one thing. The goat herder story, often called the Legend of Kaldi, is almost certainly folklore, not fact. It was written down centuries after it supposedly happened, first appearing in print only in the 1600s. But folklore is never meaningless. It survives because it captures something true, even when the details are invented. And what it captures here is this. Coffee's power was noticed by accident, by ordinary people, long before anyone understood why. The real documented history begins somewhere else, not with a goat herder, but with monks. By the 15th century, Sufi communities in Yemen were brewing a dark drink from roasted coffee beans, using it to stay alert through long nights of prayer and devotion. This wasn't a treat, it was a tool, a technology for staying conscious when the body wanted to shut down. The historian Mark Pendergrast, in his research on coffee's global spread, traces how this monastic practice slipped out of the monasteries and into the streets of Mecca, then Cairo, then Constantinople, carried along the same routes as pilgrims and traders. Why did it spread so fast? Ask yourself something now. What do you do the moment you feel tired at work? You don't lie down. You can't. So what do you reach for instead? The answer hasn't changed in 500 years. By the 1500s, something new appeared in the Islamic world that had never existed before. A public building whose entire purpose was to serve this drink and nothing else. The coffee house. Historian Anthony Wilde, who has written extensively on coffee's darker political history, describes how these coffee houses in Cairo and Constantinople became something far more dangerous to those in power than a simple cafe. They became meeting grounds, places where poetry was read aloud, where chess was played for hours, where political grievances were whispered between strangers who might never have spoken otherwise. This alarmed rulers so much that coffee was banned, repeatedly. In Mecca in 1511, religious authorities shut down coffee houses, fearing they encouraged gatherings that could organize opposition. In Ottoman Constantinople, one sultan reportedly made drinking coffee a crime punishable by death for a second offense. Think about that for a moment. A hot drink, banned under threat of execution because the people in charge understood something you rarely think about today. A caffeinated, alert, gathered population is a population that talks, and talk is dangerous to anyone trying to keep people quiet. The bans never worked. They never do. Coffee moved anyway, smuggled in saddlebags and merchant ships, crossing the Red Sea, then the Mediterranean, until it reached Venice by the early 1600s. Europe did not know what to make of it. Dark, bitter, foreign. Some Catholic clergy called it the bitter invention of Satan and pushed it for being banned outright. According to the accounts that survive, Pope Clement VIII was asked to condemn the drink. Instead, he is said to have tasted it first and reportedly remarked that it would be a shame to let only the infidels enjoy something so delicious before giving it his blessing. True or embellished, the outcome was real. Coffee didn't just survive in Europe, it exploded. By the late 1600s, London alone had thousands of coffeehouses. And here is where it gets interesting for you, specifically right now in whatever room you are sitting in. These coffeehouses were nicknamed penny universities because for the price of a single cup, you could sit for hours, read the newspapers chained to the tables, and argue about science, politics, and money with strangers of every class. Lloyd's of London, still one of the largest insurance markets on earth, began as literal conversations inside a coffeehouse run by a man named Edward Lloyd. The London Stock Exchange has roots traced to another. Even the Royal Society, one of the earliest and most important scientific institutions in history, held informal meetings in these same rooms. Pause and let that sit. The modern financial system, modern scientific collaboration, modern journalism in its earliest public form, all of it took shape, at least in part, in rooms full of people wired on caffeine, arguing loudly with each other because they finally had the mental stamina to do it for hours at a stretch. You are not just drinking a beverage in the morning. You are participating in a ritual that quite literally helped architect the modern world. But why does it work at all? Why does this one plant compound have this effect on almost every human brain on the planet? Here's the part that gets left out of the coffeehouse stories. Your brain runs on a chemical called adenosine. Throughout your waking hours, adenosine slowly builds up in your brain, attaching to specific receptors, and the more it builds, the sleepier you feel. It is, in effect, your brain's built-in countdown timer to bedtime. Sleep researcher Matthew Walker, whose work has shaped much of the modern scientific understanding of sleep, describes caffeine's trick simply. Caffeine doesn't give you energy. It has almost the same molecular shape as adenosine, so it slides into those same receptors and blocks them. It doesn't remove your tiredness, it hides it from you, like unplugging a smoke alarm instead of putting out the fire. That's why, hours later, when the caffeine wears off, all the adenosine that built up while you were blocking it floods back in at once. That crash you feel in the afternoon isn't your imagination. It's the bill coming due for a debt you paid off with caffeine instead of sleep. And there's one more piece, buried even deeper than the chemistry. In 2014, a team of researchers led by geneticist Victor Albert at the University at Buffalo sequenced the coffee plant's genome for the first time. What they found surprised even them. The genes that let coffee plants produce caffeine evolved completely separately from the genes that let tea and cacao plants do the same thing. 3 unrelated branches of plant life on different continents arrived at the exact same chemical trick through entirely different evolutionary paths. Ask yourself why that might be. The answer researchers point to is almost poetic. Caffeine in small doses inside a leaf acts as a natural pesticide, and in the soil where fallen leaves decompose, it even suppresses the growth of competing plants nearby. The plant didn't evolve caffeine to help you focus. It evolved caffeine as a plant weapon. You have simply been drinking a plant's chemical warfare for 1,000 years, and it happens to make your brain feel sharper as a side effect. So here is where you actually are. You are not so different from that Sufi monk in Yemen 600 years ago, chasing alertness through a long, difficult stretch of time. You are not so different from a coffeehouse patron in 1680s London using caffeine to fuel hours of conversation and thought. The building has changed, the cup has changed, the reason has not. This morning you woke up and you reached for a switch or a button or a pod. What you were really reaching for was a 1,000-year-old survival tool, a banned revolutionary substance, and a plant's ancient chemical weapon, all